He was the Imam after Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. So I went to him because I thought that he's the Imam. And when I entered, he was sitting on a very high place. He was sitting in an inappropriate manner. And I asked him questions. I wanted to see, does he have the knowledge or not? And his answers were incorrect. I knew the answers were incorrect. Therefore, I left disappointed. I was not happy. And I was desperate because this is amana, he said. This man, Abu Ja'far al-Nishapuri said, I have been entrusted with this. I must deliver it. So then I went to the grave of the Holy Prophet Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I said to him, Bi abi anta wa ummi. May my soul and my mother and my father be sacrificed for you. I don't know where to go. Shall I go to the Jews? Shall I go to the Christians? Shall I go to the Nasiris? Who shall I go to? I don't know who to turn to. He said, whilst I was crying and beseeching next to the grave, I raised my head and there was a slave. He looked at me and said, Oh, Aba Ja'far, you don't need to go to these groups. You can go to the Imam of your time. I said, who is he? He said, come with me and I will show you. He knew my name. I didn't know who he was. He took me to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far Bab al-Hawa'ij salawatullahi wa salam. Allah. He said, as soon as I entered, I saw this awe. I felt this awe. This humility that the Imam had. This status that he had. Everything about him resembled and indeed gave me the confidence that he was truly the Imam. Then he looked at me. He said, without anyone telling him anything, without this man speaking, the servant, Imam looked at me and said, Aba Ja'far, la ila al-Yahud wa la ila al-Nasara. No, you don't go to the Jews, and you don't go to the Christians, and you don't go to the Nawasib, to the ones who hate the Ahl-e-Bait. You go to Hujjatullah fi Ard. Go to the proof of Allah. Wa ana Hujjatullah. I am the proof of Allah on this earth. Then he said to me, Aba Ja'far, give me the bag that you have. So he said, I had the bag. Immediately I gave it to him. He put his blessed hand inside. And what I had done in Nishapur to distinguish that coin that Shaykh had given me, I had bent it. Because, I wanted it to stand out, maybe for a reason. He said the Imam put his hand in the bag and took this particular silver coin. And then he looked at me and said, when you go back, tell Shutaita that I send my salam upon her a lot. Iqra alayha salam kathira. The riwayah says he put a lot, not just salam from me to her, a lot of salam. Then he said to his servant, bring me this piece of cloth that I have prepared. Kafan. It was something that he said was 25 dirham, 25 pounds, a huge piece of shroud. He said he bought it to him, and Imam then looked at me, Abu Ja'far, this man, and he said to me, this has been prepared from the cotton of the farm that belongs to my mother Fatima. And she used to herself prepare the cotton only for her sons, especially for her sons and her family to use in order to make the shroud. I want you to take this to Shudayb and give it to her. And here are also 40 dirhams. You must give her, and he gave details how to use this. Then he said, tell her that my salam is upon her. She will die after a while, and I will come and recite salam on her body. Subhanallah. It's unbelievable. Just do that, right? And then he responds to some questions of people who had from Nishapur, right? Some narration says he returned the money to them. He said, now you use it there. And this man said, I was really struck by this. I went back after I did Hajj with the Imam. He said, I stayed in Medina, then we went to perform Hajj. And afterwards, I went back to Nishapur. When I went back to Nishapur, who was waiting for me? This lady, Shutaima. As soon as I gave her kafan, when I gave her the 40 dirhams, she became extremely joyous and happy. She was delighted that I told her that the Imam is sending salam upon you. She lived for another 19 days according to the riwayah. And after she died, he said, the moment they brought her body, I saw somebody on an animal, on a camel that's approaching. He had his face covered. And as soon as he dismounted from this animal, somehow people had respect for him. They didn't know who he was, but their hearts were full of awe. As soon as he came close to me, I could see it is the Imam. He prayed on her body. Then when she was put in the grave, he took out something from what he was carrying, and it was the soil from the grave of Imam al-Hussein. And he sprinkled it on her body inside the grave. Then he looked at him. This is who? Imam al-Islam. He looked at him and said, this is my message. I want you to get this message all across. And this is a message for you and I today. Listen to what the Imam al-Islam said. Arif ashabak. Know who our Shia is. Waqra anni, waqra'ahum anni salam. And send my salam to them. وَقُلْ لَهُمْ, and say to them this, إِنَّنِي وَمَنْ جَرَى مُحِبِّيَ مِنْ أَهْلِ-e-Bait, I and whomsoever, this is a message from those who display the loving of us Ahl-e-Bait. لَا بُدَّ لَنَا مِنْ حُضُورِ جَنَائِزِكُمْ فِي أَيِّ بَلَدٍ كُنْتُمْ. Imam says, we will attend and pray over your bodies wherever you are. We will come. But فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. There is a condition. If you are somebody who has taqwa in your action, وَأَحْسِنُوا الْأَعْمَالِ, and do righteous deeds, perform good deeds, لِتُعِينُونَنَا عَلَى خَلَاصِكُمْ, because by doing so, you will help us to save you. وَفَكِّ رِقَابِكُمْ مِنَ النَّارِ, and you will be released from the chastisement of hell. This is a very interesting story. Why? Because of a number of key points here that we'd like to just draw in order for you and I to reflect on what it means to our lives specifically. What is the reason that the Imam alayhi salam, the seventh holy Imam, paid so much attention to a lady who he's never met? Shubayta. What did she do? History doesn't tell us. The only thing we can figure out was the fact that despite having only this one silver coin, she was dedicated to do and serve and do her duties. So, number one, she was an individual who displayed ikhlas, sincerity. She was willing to do whatever it takes to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though this man was somebody who was ridiculing, or not ridiculing, but taking it lightly. How can you just send this one silver coin? Doesn't really mean much. But Imam alayhi salam perhaps is sending this message that if an individual exhibits and demonstrates sincerity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is not something to be taken lightly. That Allah wa ta'ala rewards those who are mukhlaseen. Many times we hear this message of the importance to scrutinize our intentions before we do something. And I believe, in my humble reflection, there has been not a more important time to question our intention than now throughout history of mankind. You know why? Because before, if you had an intention to please people, you could only have it displayed when you meet people, or when you write a letter, or you give a speech. Now it's very easy to be falling into the traps of shaitan, to do things for the attention and the approval of others, because we have technology, we have social media, we have the internet. And so now the temptation is there to always somehow reflect on this idea that we may do things to attain the pleasure of others at the expense of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore our actions may not necessarily be only for Him. Very briefly, what are the signs of someone who is a mukhlas? How do I know if I'm doing something only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Number one, I should be an individual who is not looking for praise when I do something.
Subhanallah.
That is the first sign. And who says this? Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib sallallahu wa sallam. What do we mean? We mean that if I do get praise, Imam Bakr says, what happened? Someone asked him, you know what, some of us do good deeds, and someone says, mashallah, well done, very good. Imam said, that's no problem, because you are not waiting and expecting it. But if we are doing actions, and we would not do this again unless someone tells us well done, then we're not doing it for Allah. We're not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want somebody to congratulate us, somebody to tell us well done, and therefore we feel good. So the intention of an individual who is mukhlas should be for Allah, meaning that they are not necessarily doing it to attain praise, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them that praise. إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. This is the story of the Ahl-e-Bait alayhi salam. When they fed for 3 days, they said to those people, we don't want you to thank us, because Allah will thank us.